Welcome to EPG Pathshala students for another lovely session, very interesting session on psychology, the importance of psychology in adult education. And what part of psychology are we going to look at today? We are going to look at learning in the context of operant conditioning. I am Dr. Anuradha Sovni. I am professor and head of psychology at SNDT Women's University. Today, by the end of the session, you would understand, the learners would understand how exactly operant conditioning principles can be applied to learning, how reward schedules, reinforcement schedules can be operated in such a way that the learner would learn to the best possible capacity. So, let us go on this journey of understanding what is really operant conditioning. Friends, we are always keen to be able to understand what drives people's behavior. We are observing behavior, we want to control and manage behavior, we would like to be in charge of other people's behavior. But for that, we have to first understand and measure and control it. We should be able to see from what kind of patterns that behavior is coming. So, there is an important theory and therapy in psychology which focuses on this, which is called behavioral therapy. There are many other theories in psychology which focus on other aspects. They focus on emotions, on feelings, on how a person learns, what sort of motives are there, on dreams, on so many other things. But today we are focusing on behavioral therapy and theory exclusively. For this, first we have to understand what is behavior. There are many different definitions of behavior, many different descriptions. Behavior can be defined as an activity that a person undertakes. There are various words that can be used to explain what you mean by an activity. So, it can be action, it can be performance, it can be response, it can be reaction. Behavioral theory claims that behavior is anything a person says or does. A strictly scientific definition of behavior would be muscular, glandular or electrical activity of the organism. In other words, behavioral theory or behavioral science does look at human behavior from the lens of these kind of definitions. We could also look at animal behavior. Technically, the same principles would control human behavior and animal behavior. In the context of this program, of course, because we are looking at adult education, we are going to concentrate only on human behavior. Since we are interested in trying to teach adult humans, and we don't want to train animals or anything like that. But keep in mind that the same theory really underlies this. The very same rules of behavioral analysis would apply to humans or animals, specifically rules of operant conditioning, which is what we are going to focus on in this particular module. So, we are learning now how one can train either a human or an animal, or so the same rules would apply for dogs, dolphins, white mice, but let us look at humans. What is behavior? Overt and covert behavior. Behavioral theorists tell us that we are looking at two types of behavior. Overt behavior, which is directly observable, I am watching a person and I am seeing what they do. Covert behavior, which needs to be inferred. So, behavioral science, operant conditioning makes it a kind of a point that they must make clear that you are picking up the subtle feelings, emotions and so on, but only to the extent that they can be inferred from observation, not based on personal reportage and so on. When we begin to think of the applications of behavioral science, they are huge. Applications to behavioral change are almost endless. We begin to enter the area of behavior modification, and this module focuses on the operant conditioning techniques which one would apply in this context to achieve behavior modification. And which behavior modification? Of whom? Of humans. So, behavior modification of human behavior using behavioral principles. So, what is this behavior modification? Let us try and define it a little bit. Behavior modification is the systematic application of behavioral principles, of learning principles and techniques to behavior, to assess behavior, to change behavior, to improve overt and covert behavior of our learners, of our adult learners, to help them to function more fully. The aim of behavior modification is thus amply clear. We want to understand very carefully the current frequency, intensity and duration of certain behaviors. Remember these terms, they are very important. Then we wish to change using schedules of reinforcement, frequency, intensity and duration of behaviors. So, we are basically using rewards and punishments that govern this behavior. So, there is a very well defined schedule that needs to be applied in a very regular, planned and systematic fashion until we achieve the behavior change that we are heading for, that we are aiming for in the person's repertoire. So, this activity that you are undertaking can be summarized as operant conditioning procedures. So, we have understood now what we are trying to do, apply the principles of behavior modification of any sort, and there are many different principles. Specifically, we are trying to apply operant conditioning for adult learning, and we are trying to see that administering rewards, punishments, largely rewards, less of punishments, will have an immediate impact, will have an immediate result in the shift of the behavior pattern that we are trying to manage, that we are trying to establish. For example, we want to ensure that a certain, say, let us take a child's example. You want the child to get up in the morning, go to the basin, the wash basin and brush his or her teeth. So, I establish a kind of reward schedule. So, if he goes straight from his bed to the wash basin, picks up his brush, puts toothpaste on it and begins brushing his teeth, then he gets an immediate reward. He gets maybe a glass of his favorite flavored milk. He loves chocolate milk, so you give him chocolate milk. Now, what you are trying to do in this manner is, he will have his milk if he does not do what we have asked him to do, but it will not be with his favorite flavor. So, you see, we are trying to establish how to improve a certain behavior in a child. One day he may say, I am bored, I do not want to brush, there are guests at home, I want to play with them. So, you will take away some of the reward. Okay? You may say you are going to get your reward only if you do as told, even if exactly as you have outlined. This is the strength of behavior modification. So, the child will then brush his teeth, run to the kitchen, drink his favorite chocolate milk, and this pattern will therefore be established. But if you do not do that, he will run and drink his chocolate milk without brushing his teeth, and then your behavior pattern is broken and your reward schedule is interrupted. So, now you understand why it is very important to stick to the steps, to plan the pattern very well, ensure that the pattern is not broken, establish it from scratch again and again if it is broken, and ensure that the child learns exactly what it is that you are expecting the child to do. So, this is how I am going to show you in a number of different ways how operant conditioning principles, how behavioral conditioning principles can be powerful and produce the most amazing results. Operant conditioning is called operant. The word, you must be wondering why we are using the word operant, because the learner is responding to certain inner drives. Okay? It is not a passive reaction to external circumstances. They are operating actively on their environment. They are trying to actually achieve those rewards, those reinforcers, to win them, right. So, it is an effort that they are making, and only then they will get reinforced. So, that is why it is called operant conditioning, because they are operating upon their environment. Operant conditioning handles behavioral deficits and behavioral excesses. Let us take an example of a behavioral deficit. We took an example earlier of how to teach a child to brush. Let us take a person who is very shy, who does not want to mix with others, who does not know what to say to others, they can't pick up a conversation, So, what we are trying to do is operant conditioning schedules we are trying to put into place, where we are targeting this behavior of the individual and encouraging him to speak more, say at a party or in a social gathering. So, the number of times he actually indulges in such behaviors, that adult receives, or an adolescent or even child receives a reward which is pre-planned. So, this starts motivating them to show that behavior more and more. The desired reward is so strong, the desire for that reinforcer is so strong that they keep on showing the socially desirable behavior of talking to others, shaking hands, mixing with people, and you actually shape their behavior away from the shyness that they have had earlier into more sociable behavior. So, behavioral excesses and behavioral deficits both can be kind of controlled in this manner using the principles of operant conditioning. Excesses can be reduced, like a tantrum, for example, you can try and cut down. So, when a child, for example, is throwing a temper tantrum in a public place, the mother does not know how to deal with this, or the father does not know how to deal with this, you are going to apply operant conditioning principles to ensure that the child shows this behavior less and less. Just as earlier we said, shy behavior has to go away and he has to show sociable behavior more and more. So, nail biting, temper tantrums, all these can be handled. Now, operant conditioning now we are using in the context of adult learning, and let me reassure you that although professionals use this specifically for therapy, the principles can be learned by all. Operant conditioning principles are very, very effective. They are very simple and straightforward if used in a proper scientific way, and anybody can learn to apply these in the field of education, as we are going to be trying to teach you to do in this context. A person who is reluctant to attend class, for example, in school or college, you can actually plan a behavior modification schedule to make them start attending regularly. Operant conditioning principles are used by a variety of professions. Nursing people can use it very well to ensure that patients take their medicine on time, that they indulge in the behaviors they are taught to do, like exercise or a good life routine. So, operant conditioning principles are useful for a number of different professions. Sports coaches can use these very, very extensively. In fact, they are used quite extensively, so that the child or the adult or the adolescent who is playing the game is encouraged to do certain things. Coaches, trainers, parents, teachers, everybody can use operant conditioning principles, and they are very powerful, they are very successful, and they can quite quickly get for you the behavioral change that you want. But it is just that they have to be, the plan has to be made very carefully and they have to be followed very closely. Operant conditioning or learning that results from this kind of a schedule can have very satisfying consequences. Thorndike, Skinner are some of the researchers who told you that it is these satisfying consequences that keep encouraging the same behavior again and again. So, let us first look at the simple principle of positive reinforcement. What is positive reinforcement? This is a situation, friends, when you are going to receive something that you really want in return for carrying out a certain activity or a certain behavior. So, it is a reward. You really want something a lot, you produce the behavior which is expected, so you operate on your environment, and when you produce this behavior that is expected, you earn that reward which you really, really want. Getting that reward encourages you to do the same thing again. It is like a pat on your back for doing what you have done, for being praised, for getting something that you really like. And in return for that, you now start doing the same thing more and more. So, all these, getting a room of your own, getting a toy that you like, getting a book that you wanted, all these are examples of positive reinforcement. And there is more than enough evidence to show that positive reinforcers can lead to very quick behavior change. What are the types of positive reinforcers that we have? One example, a simple example, is a consumable reinforcer, say chocolate. All of us enjoy eating chocolate or ice cream. So, the person can be actually trained to do a certain thing in return for this kind of a concrete reinforcer, a consumable reinforcer. But you can also have activity reinforcers. something that you like to do a lot. Say a child likes to play with some other friends, or he likes to go to the park with his mother or his father. So an activity reinforcer can also be given to a child in return for something that you really want them to do. So it doesn't have to always be a consumable. In fact, consumable reinforcers are a little less powerful than activity reinforcers, because you can get tired of them after a while. A variation of an activity reinforcer can be a manipulative kind of reinforcer, where you can play with something, say a mechano set or a toy or cars or whatever it is that a child might like, or for an adult he might enjoy a carpentry set, or something like that, which they derive pleasure from manipulating material, playing with clay, painting. All these are manipulation reinforcers, which are activity reinforcers essentially, but you enjoy manipulating or working with certain material, and that's what increases the chance of improving or increasing the frequency or intensity or duration of a certain behavior which you really want to increase. So always keep in mind that there are a variety of reinforcers that you can play with in your schedules, and there are many such more which I will introduce to you in the course of this lesson. Another important area of reward can also be when you say, for example, a person wants to cut down smoking. Okay, that's often a goal for an adult learner. It gives him great pleasure, he doesn't really want to give it up, he's indulging in it, he's free to, he can buy his own cigarettes. So how do you do this? So another very powerful reinforcer, another powerful type of reinforcer is what we call social reinforcers. Social reinforcers, like somebody, your best friend, praising you, or somebody patting you on the back and saying, wow, you gave up smoking, that is really amazing, or you've really cut it down a lot. So research has shown that social reinforcers can be very powerful, in fact even more powerful than consumable or activity or manipulation reinforcers. So behavioral schedules that you build, that psychologists build for you in order to encourage adults to learn, should be a good combination of different kinds of reinforcements. It will not help to use the same kind of reinforcement over and over and over again, because the person will get bored of getting the same kind of reward. So try and think of multiple ways in which you can utilize these principles of reinforcement and use positive reinforcement very effectively. Mix and match different types of reinforcers and try and see how best you can bring about a behavioral change. Something that you must keep in mind when you are using positive reinforcers is that you also have to have a kind of schedule of reinforcement, right? So the person who is looking at that reinforcement should really be kept wanting it. Can you use negative reinforcement, you will ask. If there is a word like positive, there should also be a negative. Of course, operant conditioning allows you to use negative reinforcement. What happens here? You withdraw an unpleasant stimulus as a reward. So it's a very tricky kind of reinforcement. Okay? The person first should be doing certain things which they don't like to do. And then when you take away that, it's a very, very effective way to reinforce a person. So for example, a child does not like to do homework, and then you say, okay, today as a special reward, you don't have to do homework today. Alright? Or an adult may not like to do certain cleaning and clearing up chores in the kitchen, or lay the table, or do something. So as a reward at the end of a busy, tiring day that they have had, if you say that, alright, today you don't have to do all these chores, today you get a holiday from doing all this, right? So a negative reinforcement can be very powerful because you're getting a break from something that you really don't want to do. So it's a tricky way to use reinforcement. Punishment is another technique which is also an operant technique. It has been shown that it's not as powerful, as effective as positive and negative reinforcement. So it should be used very sparingly. You see, it is very powerful. You can ensure certain behavior is completely stopped because it's an unpleasant outcome that is coming your way when you're being punished, right? But what happens is that it doesn't continue to be effective. See, punishment, let's use some examples. Suppose you cut a day's salary, or you cut marks because you've not done something properly, or a child is asked to stand outside the classroom because he has not done something well, right? So you give up something that you like, something nice that you actually enjoy is taken away from you and you feel bad about that. A child may be told you can't read your favorite storybook for the whole of today, or you won't get pocket money for this week, or you may not wear your favorite clothes for a certain amount of time. Why? Because you have shown some bad behavior, because you have indulged in some bad behavior. Why are you trying to do this? You are trying to ensure that that negative behavior doesn't really happen too much again. But what happens is that the punishment gets associated or transferred to the person who is giving the punishment. So then that person doesn't remain very popular. You can't go on working with that individual using punishments. So punishment should be used sparingly. You don't want to create resentment in the mind of the person who's at the receiving end of the punishment. So bottom line, use positive reinforcement a lot. Use negative reinforcement quite creatively if you can. Use punishment if you have to, but use it sparingly. And in this manner, if you actually handle your adult learners by playing around with unpleasant situations which are holding back, negative reinforcement, pleasant situations which you are proffering, right, then you will be able to change people's behavior well. Punishment that is corporal punishment, hitting a person, is absolutely the worst kind of punishment. So we are already very clear that we don't want to use corporal punishment. Even for little children, not at all. Time out can be used. Time out means they don't get to do a favorite activity for a little while. That is very effective. That's a good method, you can use it. So every time the person has shown some undesirable behavior, they get time out from something that they really enjoy, like listening to music, or so they can't do that for some time. That is the meaning of time out. So that can be used, that is fine. Let us get into a brief history of how operant conditioning came about, how operant conditioning evolved, how did behavioral theorists develop these different approaches over time. You have some big names in this field. You have J.B. Watson, who actually said, give me a dozen healthy infants and I will actually create a specified world of my own around them and I will guarantee to make any one of them what I want. Okay, now this was a big kind of expectation. This was a big claim to make, but he actually had this confidence that I can make him a doctor, a lawyer, an artist, a merchant chief, and even a beggar man or a thief. So what he's trying to say is you don't have to create only good things. You can even create negative roles by effectively using behavior modification principles, by effectively using operant conditioning principles. The role of the environment was highlighted by Skinner, who was another very prominent psychologist. He said that it is the way the individual operates on the environment, that is the crux of how operant conditioning techniques work. So we would actually have to create specific schedules of reinforcement. I am going to give you examples of token economy later, of shaping later, which are important techniques which Skinner developed. So I am going to now highlight for you some of the important pointers of successful behavioral reinforcement, of successful application of operant conditioning principles in order to be able to bring in the behavior that you expect, the change in behavior that you very much want, but you have to be very specific, very careful applying these operant conditioning principles. Behavioral scientists will draw out in detail the exact steps that you have to draw out, how you address a particular problem. Okay? For example, if a mother is telling you, my child is being very naughty or disobedient, my child is acting like the devil, my child is deliberately doing this to disturb me. These kind of descriptors are of no use. They are not exact, they are not specific. We would want this mother to actually spell out the behaviors. What is this child doing? Hitting other children, throwing food, telling lies, running away from school, not sharing their toys with other children. So be very specific in describing the behavior. Reinforcers have to also be defined with care. very, very good judgment. It's no use if you decide to give a reinforcer and you keep on giving that reinforcer again and again when they don't like it. For example, if they don't like sweets and you keep on offering a sweet, or a person who doesn't like to read and you say, I'll give you a book. It's no use, they're not going to do what you ask them to do. So the consequent changes in behavior that you expect as a result of this reward just won't be forthcoming, because the person doesn't like those sweets or that book. Also, a person who has been deprived of that particular reward for a while, then that reward becomes very precious to them. So, I haven't had a chance to read a nice book for a while, I'll actually work hard to do whatever it is that that schedule specifies, right. So, a satiated adult, a satiated person who has got more than enough, if you tell me I'll give you a day off and it is in the middle of a long vacation, how valuable is it to me? But if you tell me I'll give you a day off in the middle of a very busy week where I've been very tired with my work, I will really value that day off. That reinforcer will have meaning for me, and then I will probably do more in return for that reinforcer. So, that is the kind of principle behind reinforcement. Size of the reinforcer also matters a lot, you see. If you are offering a large slab of chocolate after every successful trial of learning, the person will stop trying after some time. They eat 2 big slabs of chocolate, they are satiated. You give the child a bicycle to ride, for in return for marks in some small exam, he is going to ride away and go on riding his bicycle and not apply his mind anymore to the studies. So, another important rule is that make smaller units of reinforcement, smaller units of reward, a small piece of chocolate, a little time free at a time, a small amount of money, right. So, keep all these factors in mind. This is token reinforcement also, token economy. You can collect up your points. I say I give you a star each time you do something good in a classroom. You collect 10 stars, you can go watch a movie, or you collect 10 stars, you can go buy something you like. That is token economy. Contingency is another very, very crucial principle of behavior modification. The reward has to be contingent upon the action. If you give away that particular reward before the person has done the action, it's no use. For example, if a child says, I'm going to do my homework, come on, let me go and play now. After some time, I'll come back and do my homework. After some time, I'll come back and I'll clean up my room. Tomorrow, I'll do it. And you give away the reinforcer, he will not do it afterwards, maybe. So, dispense the reinforcer only after the person has delivered the behavior which has been promised. After they have demonstrated that they are doing what they have promised to do, only then. So, contingency. Immediacy is another interesting principle. Very often, you offer a reward or a punishment and you give it much later. So, very many times the person doesn't make the connection only between what happened and why they were given that reward or why they were given that punishment. If a person has been naughty in the morning, a child has broken an object in the morning, and then if you say, I will see to it by evening that you get some punishment. So, you spank a child, which you really shouldn't do, no corporal punishments, but say you take away something that they want, punish them for a wrong act, grow angry, shout at them, but hours later, the person doesn't make the connection between what happened, what was the wrong they did and what they are being punished for. So, immediacy. Consistency must also be maintained. If one person in the family is strict about following certain rules, like the example we took for the child brushing his teeth, but the others are not doing as expected, the others are giving away the rewards freely, it won't work. So, consistency, contingency, immediacy are very important. I am going to now cover a very important point in operant conditioning, which is schedules of reinforcement. We are going to learn how to actually plan when to deliver the reinforcement, fitting in the delivery of the reinforcers into a proper schedule. This is also very important and necessary. You see, rewards cannot just be given for every instance of the behavior. Every time I do something correct, if you start giving me the reward, it will have diminishing returns. I will stop caring for it as much. So it would not be practicable to keep on doing this. And how many reinforcers will I keep on giving? How many rewards will I keep on giving? So I have to taper down slowly. Once the behavior is well established, I have to reduce the rate with which rewards are given. Let me tell you about fixed reinforcement schedules. Here what happens is there is a predetermined pattern where the person is given the reinforcer, say for every third time he does the act, every fourth or fifth time he does the act, whatever it is that you want him to do. So take the example of shyness, every time he talks to people. Okay? So behavior keeps recurring and the reward happens at specified instances. So the behavior gets rooted into the person's repertoire. You can also have variable reinforcement schedules where on an average you are giving a reward every fourth or fifth instance, but this is not a fixed, it is not like 5th, 10th, 15th, 20th. There is on an average a kind of predetermined pattern that we establish and the reward will be delivered at that particular time after a particular number of correct behaviors, expected behaviors on an average. So fixed and variable ratio schedules are very useful. They add to the strength of the behavior by giving the person the reinforcer at certain specified times without giving it the reinforcer each and every time that particular behavior occurs. Now let us come to interval schedules, fixed interval schedules and variable interval schedules. Interval schedules means that the reinforcer appears once in a fixed span of time, not for every fourth or fifth or sixth response, but say every 10th minute or every hour. So every time, every fixed amount of period of time that the person keeps on giving positive reactions, on the hour the reward will come to him. In variable interval schedules, much like earlier, it may not be an exact, so it may not be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes span. It might be on an average after say every 45 minutes. So on an average every hour the person will get a reinforcer, but it may not be on the hour, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. So these are complex schedules which you are trying to design in order to reduce the number of reinforcers that you deliver, but still try and keep the behavior intact. Try and ensure that the learned behavior is quite fixed. So we have found that these ratio, variable and interval schedules make the behavior very resistant to change. So it's quite an interesting application of operant conditioning. Let us see where we can apply operant conditioning in our day-to-day lives for our adult learners, making it extremely useful as a behavioral technique. I am going to discuss with you some of these applications. Let's choose health area as an application. Lifestyle management. You want to put operant conditioning principles to good use. You want to reward people for say not doing certain behaviors like not smoking, not eating junk food. You also want to reinforcement for doing certain behaviors like keeping to a diet, exercise and so on. Mental health areas also you can use operant conditioning a lot. You can use it in the context of behavioral disorders, behavioral distress, phobias, extreme fears of something. We can try and train the person to face situations which they used to fear earlier. So say a person who has extreme stage fright, stage fear. We can put these schedules into place, offer them a chance to maybe visit their favorite restaurant or meet their friend after they have spoken successfully in front of an audience. So all these behaviors can be shaped with operant conditioning. School behaviors, shy behavior in school, a child who doesn't want to speak to other children so much, you are encouraging him to be more sociable and maybe to raise one's hand answering questions in class, be more interactive with the teacher, and you can shape this behavior in the child using rewards and punishments. Relaxation responses can also be engendered, like a person is very tensed up all the time, you have to train him taking breaks from work, keeping aside time for recreation, trying to make him more active, trying to utilize that time well for his own good, for his own health. So health, sports, mental health, teaching, parenting, all these are very important areas in which we might actually use operant conditioning. I have tried to introduce you friends to a number of different ways in which this very powerful behavioral technology can actually be employed. I hope you start trying out some of these things. The interesting thing is you can even do it with yourself. You can even offer rewards to yourself for doing some task which you were trying to put off earlier, being a little lazy about. It's always nice to try and address your own procrastination by using behavioral rewards and punishments. So, I hope you use this science very well. Operant conditioning is an extremely powerful discipline, extremely powerful way to shape behavior. I hope you can use it for in the context of adult learners to motivate them to learn better. So, ending this session on operant conditioning, this is Dr. Anuradha Sovni, Head of Psychology Department, Professor and Head at SNDT Women's University in Mumbai. I hope you enjoyed your session and you will have many more such interesting sessions in EPG Pathshala. Thank you very much.